WAMPO, right? 3 to 5, and then.
Well, good morning and welcome to all of you that could join us today. We have a lot to cover before we get into our holidays, and so we will call the meeting to order. And as we call the meeting to order, I'm going to ask for a moment of silence for the Easley family who lost a child this past week. And the Easley family is part of our police department family. So let's share in a moment of silence, please. Well, thank you all and appreciate that. And we will start our morning off with an invocation from the Reverend Debbie Garrett of Open Door Homeless Resource. Following the invocation, we will have a Pledge of Allegiance, and we invite you all to join us for both of those. Reverend, great to have you.
Let us bow our heads. Most gracious Father, we welcome you into our meeting place today. We thank you for waking us up this morning fully clothed and in our right minds. We thank you, Lord, for our health and our strength. We thank you, God, for your loving arms of protection that surround us and our families. I ask, God, that you bless the city council leaders. We thank you for trusting them to make the right decisions about the communities in which we live and serve. Lord, we ask that you forgive us of our trespasses as we forgive those who have trespassed against us. Remove all bitterness, resentment, and unforgiveness from our hearts, Lord. Remove all the clutter from our minds in the name of Jesus. I pray the decisions that will be made here today will impact our communities in a positive way. Lord, I ask that you continue to provide and protect the men and women that work for the city of Wichita, especially our police officers that put their own lives on the line to keep our streets safe. Place a hedge of protection around them and their families. I pray that city council leaders work together with love and respect for each other and their ideas. As we go about our day today, help us to remember the children and youth and young adults that will be graduating this month as we continue to pray for a safe summer. Let us remember the less fortunate. The Bible says, if we have not love, we are nothing. All these things I pray in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Reverend Garrett. Our first approval is approval of the minutes of the regular meeting on May 7th, 2019. Any changes or corrections? Seeing none, I move that we approve those meeting minutes.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Cast your vote. The motion passes 7-0. We have some proclamations this morning. So our first proclamation is the Law Enforcement Memorial Week, so if any of the folks here, Chief, good to have you. And Deputy Chief. Proclamation from the City of Wichita, Kansas, founded in 1870. Whereas the Congress of the United States of America has designated the week of May 13th through 19th, 2019 to be Law Enforcement Memorial Week, to honor and pay tribute to those law enforcement officers who have lost their lives in the line of duty for the safety and protection of others. Whereas our law enforcement officers are guardians of life and property, defenders of the individual right to be free men and women, warriors in the battle against crime, and are dedicated to the preservation of life and property. And whereas our community desires to honor the valor, service, and dedication of its own police officers and sheriff deputies, now therefore be it resolved that I, Jeff Longwell, Mayor of the City of Wichita, along with the Wichita City Council, do hereby proclaim Sunday, May 13th through the 19th of 2019 as Law Enforcement Memorial Week in Wichita and Sedgwick County, Kansas, and call upon all citizens to express our appreciation to these men and women who are willing to sacrifice their lives, if necessary, to guard us and our loved ones against all who violate the law. Chief, we'll turn the podium over to you. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor, for this recognition. This is an important week for our profession as we recognize all those officers who have given their lives for our communities. We also would like to invite everybody this Friday for our annual Police Memorial Day, as we have a ceremony in the council chambers as well as outside. Thank you very much.
Our next proclamation is Asian Heritage Month, and if we could have Jenny Wong Newman and her friends, you can all come up. Now, we celebrate this, Jenny, every month in our house. Good to have you all this morning. Good morning, Lily. A proclamation from the City of Wichita. Whereas May of 2019 is being recognized nationwide as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, to celebrate the culture, traditions, and history of Asian and Pacific Islanders in the United States. And whereas approximately 20,000 Asian and Pacific Islanders reside in Wichita, and whereas many leaders in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors in Wichita are Asian and Pacific Islanders, and whereas the Wichita Asian Association has for the past 39 years showcased Asian cultures through culinary and performing arts during the annual Wichita Asian Festival each October. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Jeff Longwell, Mayor of the City of Wichita, along with the Wichita City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of May of 2019 as Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and call upon citizens, parents, public and private agencies, businesses, hospitals, schools, and colleges in the city to join with the Wichita Asian Association in supporting efforts that increase public education about Asian and Pacific Islanders in the United States. And great to have you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So I would like to thank the mayor for the proclamation reading, and today I would like to take this opportunity to also thank Mark Arts for hosting Explore Asia this past Saturday on May 4th, and also the Botanical Gardens for hosting the celebration of the Asian Pacific Heritage Month on Mother's Day on May 12th. So I would like to share with you guys a few events coming up, which is the first one will be on May 26th. We have the Miss Lau New Year's Wichita, Kansas on May 26th at the Wichita Laos Temple. We also have the Miss Vietnam Wichita on Saturday, June 8th at the Wichita State CAC Theater. And last but not least, I would also like to invite all of you to attend the Wichita Asian Festival, which is on Saturday, October 26th at Century 2. Thank you.
Our last proclamation for today is Kids to Park Day, and so Troy, our Parks Director, thank you all for being here. We have a proclamation from the City of Wichita, whereas May 18th of 2019 is the 9th Kids to Parks Day, organized and launched by the National Park Trust, held annually on the third Saturday of May. And whereas Kids to Parks Day empowers kids and encourages families to get outdoors and visit America's parks. And whereas it is important to introduce a new generation to our nation's parks, and whereas we encourage children to lead a more active lifestyle to combat the issues of childhood obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and whatever that long, cholesterol, we'll practice that. I'm not a doctor. Whereas Kids to Parks Day is open to all children and adults across the country to encourage a large and diverse group of participants. And whereas Kids to Parks Day will broaden children's appreciation for nature and outdoors. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Jeff Longwell, Mayor of the City, along with the Wichita City Council, do hereby proclaim May 18th, 2019 as Kids to Parks Day and call upon people of Wichita to participate in Kids to Parks Day. We urge residents of Wichita to make time on May 18th to take their children in their neighborhood, state, or national park and combat that hypercholesterolemia.
Boy, that's fantastic, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Just a few short words. We want to invite everybody to come out to O.J. Watson this Saturday, 9 o'clock. We have tons of activities, not just for the kids, but for the adults as well. And one of the reasons why we are doing these type of activities, all the things the mayor listed, the things that he couldn't pronounce, we were finding more and more data and more information that we're not being as active as we used to be. We're finding a lot more situations where children are becoming obese and not spending as much time outside. And so the Parks and Recreation Department, we are putting on more and more activities, more different camps and other type of programs for you guys to all enjoy. So please check out our brochure. This is out in the lobby, and we got tons of activities in here, not just for kids, but for adults as well. So we want folks to come out to our parks. We want them to come out to our trails, but especially this Saturday, if you have a chance, come out to O.J. Watson. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Troy. Madam Clerk, you want to call the next item?
Consent agenda items 1 through 13.
Any items on consent agenda that need to be pulled for clarification or discussion? Seeing none, I move that we approve consent agenda items 1 through 13.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Report of Board of Bids and Contracts dated May 13th, 2019.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Hannah Lane, Department of Finance. Today I present to you the Board of Bids recommendations from the May 13th Board of Bids. First engineering bid we have is sanitary sewer lagoon rehabilitation to serve Fairway Meadow Edition. Recommendation is reject all bids. Next engineering bid is Athenian Delaware Court to serve Valencia Edition. Recommendation is Conspec Incorporated for $174,359.30. Next engineering bid is Stormwater Sewer number 431 to serve Country Hollow Second Edition. Recommendation is APAC, Kansas, for an aggregate total of $398,256.85. First purchasing bid we have is portable manhole inspection cameras. Recommendation is deferred to May 20th Board of Bids date. The next purchasing bid we have is custom set monitor cover and meter boxes. Recommendation is Group 1 Wichita Windwater for $69,720. Groups 2 and 3 for Core and More. For Group 2, $18,900. Group 3, $76,800. The next purchasing bid we have is services and licensing for K-15 for the Intelligent Traffic Systems Project. Recommendation is Trafficware Group for $83,389.20. The next purchasing bid we have is Replace Repair Sledge Press Screener for Plant 2. Recommended award is Huber Technologies for $96,200. That's all the bids. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions? Since stormwater was mentioned in there, I want to take a moment to thank our Public Works Department, who did an outstanding job during the rain events that we've had, and certainly I think this community appreciates even more the money that we spent on stormwater projects over the last 7, 8, 9 years. It certainly made a difference in our community, and we appreciate the hard work that those folks in Public Works were doing in the middle of that storm event, Alan, so pass along our appreciation. If there's no questions, I would move that we approve the award of bids as recommended.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item.
Public hearing and request for letter of intent for industrial revenue bonds, Gridley Family Foundation.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Tim Goodpasture with the City's Office of Economic Development. For the record, the item before you today is a request for a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds for the benefit of the Gridley Family Foundation. In 1994, Kirk Gridley founded Amber Wave Systems, which is a hardware technology company based in Boston, which was later sold to U.S. Robotics. In 2000, Kirk Gridley and his wife Tracy Hoover founded the Gridley Family Foundation with proceeds from the sale of the business in Wichita. To date, the foundation has donated over $2 million to charitable causes, which includes over $1 million which has been donated to Wichita State University. The foundation is creating Groover Labs, which will be a nonprofit makerspace and event center which is intended to spur startup companies. The space will include event space, co-working space, private offices, and labs to create products. The Gridley Family Foundation has purchased the former Printing Ink building at the southeast corner of 3rd and St. Francis and is now requesting a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $4 million. The letter of intent is for sales tax exemption only. It is not for a property tax abatement. The intent is to renovate the 45,000 square foot building. The area outlined in blue is the area that is owned by the Gridley Family Foundation, which is the former Printing Ink building. You can see 3rd Street roughly running across the top of the aerial, and the elevated rail corridor is running roughly through the middle of that aerial. These are some photos of the former Printing Ink building. The image on the left is the south side of the building, and the other two images are interior photos of what the building looks like. It is the intent of the foundation to renovate the facility into roughly 5 somewhat distinct sections at an approximate cost of $2.5 to $3 million. Improvements will include heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, electrical upgrades. There is a barrel roof in the middle of the building that had been closed in, that is now being, the closed-in ceiling is being torn out to expose the barrel roof. They'll be removing asbestos. There will be new bathrooms, kitchens, offices, and more. They also intend to equip the space with furniture, fixtures, machinery, and equipment at an approximate cost of about $500,000. The balance of the letter of intent, approximately $500,000 to $1 million, is being included to possibly build out a mezzanine or second floor of the event space that today is inaccessible for ADA purposes and therefore is cost ineffective to renovate, but they want to include potential dollars in the letter of intent for IRBs in case there is some use that comes along while they are renovating it that makes sense to build out. The facility will have an event space that is open space as well as an area for a stage and seating. There will be a co-working space, private offices that can be utilized for people that want to be able to lock up and secure any of their office space. There will be studios and then ultimately a maker space with labs that would include woodworking shop, metal shop, printed circuit board shop, fabrication, and an electronics shop. So this site plan shows what the facility will look like. You can see the arrow on the left side, which is pointing north. So the space on the left side is the south side of the building. You can see a large open space on the top of that floor plan, and then on the bottom of that floor plan, you can see where they would have seating for a potential speaker type of a space. The next space to the right is a co-working space that is relatively open. And then to the left middle of the space, there is private offices and an open space. And then to the right middle of this site plan, you'll see studios and conference space. And then ultimately the far right space, or the north side of the building, you see studios and maker space, which includes the shops for woodworking, metalworking, printed circuit boards, fabrication, and electronics. There is no request for a property tax abatement. It is for a sales tax exemption only. The estimated value of the sales tax exemption for the city is $6,365, and total is almost $81,000 in sales tax exemption. Cost-benefit analysis was completed by the Center for Economic Development and Business Research at Wichita State University, which showed an overall ratio of benefits to costs of 2.7 to 1 for the city and 1.35 to 1 for the city's general fund. Therefore, it is staff's recommendation that the City Council close the public hearing, adopt the resolution of intent, and authorize the necessary signatures. Kirk Gridley and Tracy Hoover of the Gridley Family Foundation are here and can answer any questions specific to the company, and I would be happy to stand for any questions as well.
Any questions at this point? Again, just a reminder, we're one of the few communities that demands a return on investment of at least 1.3 to 1, and so it's nice to see them achieve that, obviously. We'll open it up to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item?
Mayor Longwell, members of the council, Mr. Manager, my name is Jason Gregory with Downtown Wichita, 507 East Douglas Avenue. On behalf of Downtown Wichita, I'm pleased to offer support for this project as it furthers the implementation of Project Downtown. We'd like to publicly thank Kirk Gridley and Tracy Hoover and their foundation for their investment in downtown. This project converts an existing vacant building into a thriving technology hub for entrepreneurial activity. We see this as another shining example of multiple initiatives that are currently underway that help us address our need to attract and retain talent, but also help us grow our own local businesses. This project also adds to a distinctive St. Francis Street corridor where it will complement recent projects like the Wave concert venue and Coco Dolce's recent announcement to locate in the former Coleman factory outlet space. All of these projects extend the footprint of Old Town and add to the economic vitality of this area. Again, we appreciate your support for this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench and turn it over to Councilmember Claycomb, who's very familiar, lives, what, a block and a half from here?
That's right. That's right. Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank the Gridley Family Foundation and Kurt and Tracy for investing in Wichita. They could have gone anywhere with this concept, and they decided they wanted to help startup companies in Wichita focused on technology, product development, and manufacturing, and specifically startups interested in building product prototypes in Wichita. They recognized that the core of our city was a great location because of the availability of restaurants, shops, and services to the individuals using Groover Labs. And the cost-benefit ratio of 2.7 to 1 far exceeds our minimum of 1.3 to 1. Therefore, I move that the City Council close the public hearing, adopt the resolution of intent, and authorize the necessary signatures.
Second? We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Amendment to Waterwalk Ground Lease Number 1.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Jennifer Magana, City Attorney. The item before you at this time is a lease amendment for a lease that was called Waterwalk Ground Lease Number 1. This lease has been in effect for about 15 years. The city has been the landlord. It was developed as part of the East Bank redevelopment project in 2004. This lease has a 99-year term. It was formerly occupied, part of the property was formerly occupied by Gander Mountain. That building is on the premises. And most recently, a company called King of Freight has now identified a need for this space to house its growing workforce. This lease encompasses an area that's bounded by the river on the west, the south boundary line of the Boathouse property on the north, Wichita Street on the east, and Kellogg on the south. It's about 3 acres, or just under 3 acres. We're here today because King of Freight has now signed a purchase and sale agreement for the Gander Mountain building, and the city, to facilitate development on what now will be 2 parcels, has been requested to divide this original ground lease into 2 leases, which will be called amended and restated leases 1A and 1B. If this original lease is amended, the ground lease number 1 will simultaneously become amended and restated ground lease number 1A, which will be the southernmost part of the parcel, which is going to be called the King of Freight parcel, and the amended and restated ground lease number 1B, which will be the retained Waterwalk parcel. They will have generally similar terms. Specifically, amended and restated lease number 1A would provide for assignment. King of Freight will become the new tenant. As a tenant, will be required to create at least 400 net new jobs in Wichita over the next 5 years. The average salary of these 400 new jobs must average $50,000 a year. And under the provisions of the lease, if the jobs requirement is met and maintained for 10 years, the current lease rent provision will be suspended. Lease 1B is similar. Its only substantive change is description of the retained lands. Waterwalk LLC is still and will still be the tenant, and this lease also remains with a 99-year term. The expected revenue to be generated from the result of this action would be $1 million in tax revenue as a result of the new jobs and approximately $70,000 a year in parking revenue for the employees parking in the garage and on Kellogg surface underneath Kellogg. I'm available if you have questions. At this time, we're presenting it for your information. It's there's been some last minute changes, so we are presenting it for your information today to review. If it's approved by you, we will, if it's okay with you, we will bring this back for your approval and recommendation next week. So today, we'd like you to just receive this information. And if you have questions, I'm available, as is other staff.
So questions? So Jennifer, what's the hazards of dividing this up into 2 leases?
Really, it's just a physical separation of properties. We're just separating a parcel. It can be done without any negative result.
So no financial?
No negative
Issues.
financial impact or result is just dividing a parcel into two.
And do we have a kind of a map of where that division falls?
We can provide that map. I do
think
not have
that
it.
would be nice to have a visual.
Right, I think I can describe it in narrative. It's the parcel as it currently exists, Jennifer described, it basically starts at the boathouse, goes south to Kellogg, it's the river, and then, which one, what's the east boundary? Water?
Wichita.
Wichita. And then, when you divide this, the Gander Mountain property is the first parcel. The second parcel is the property north of Gander between the boathouse and Gander Mountain, that we have anticipated for future public use. But it right now is part of, it will remain in control of the Water Walk LLC.
Okay.
And I think that area is about 17,000 square feet that's undeveloped at this time.
Councilmember Claycomb?
I'd like just a little bit of clarification, mostly for the public. There seems to be a little confusion about the difference between the ground lease and the building itself. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that, about the 99-year term on the ground lease, and that's to the city, and who gets the lease or the purchase of the building?
Right, the purchase of the building would be separate. The city is not a party to the purchase of the building. That is a matter between who becomes the new tenant and the building owner. So the city is just amending the lease of the ground.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. And you know, just receiving this as well, I haven't been through the over 20-page lease yet, but can you tell us some of the things, some of the major things we'll be lifting out of this if they do go the whole 10 years?
Right, it's addressed in section 4. The lease addresses rent and how rent will be handled. That's really the major change from the 2004 ground lease. If net new jobs are created, in 10 years that rent provision will be dissolved. The new jobs must be created and maintained for 10 years, and then the rent provision would end. In addition, there's a provision for parking revenue.
What did we receive in rent payment from the previous tenant?
Mayor, we have not received any revenue under the rent provision. It talks about net income from the project, and that also, it's sales income. It's meant for retail space, destination retail. And it's if I remember the formula, it's net sales minus the cost for improvements to the building, and I believe also the construction of the building. So the formula really, in all likelihood, it was going to be, we probably weren't ever going to collect a rent under that formula.
Right. And this new arrangement doesn't obligate us to any additional building changes or costs?
No, we're recommending this new arrangement because we actually will have a cash flow now as a result of the job creation and the parking.
Between job creation and parking, almost $2 million.
Almost, over a 10-year period.
Yeah, okay. Councilmember Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. Jennifer, just kind of for the public, what happens if they do not create those jobs and leave before the period?
The rent provision will stay in the original lease as drafted in 2004.
Which could impact the next tenant, basically.
The next tenant would be bound to that rent provision.
Okay. At this point, I don't see any other questions, so we'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none. Going once, twice. All right.
Brian Parker, I'm the attorney for the applicant. I really don't have anything to say, but I just wanted, if the council had any questions, happy to try to answer them as best I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here tonight. I think that we've had most of our questions answered. Any other going once, twice? We'll bring the discussion back to the bench, and as staff has mentioned at this point in time, their recommendation is to move this to next week's agenda? And so do we simply need a deferral to do that, or is it?
I would recommend that you do that.
Okay. If there's no other questions, I think it gives us an opportunity to digest all of this information and for the public to understand it even better. I would move that we defer this agenda item for 1 week.
Second?
We have a motion and a second for deferral. Any other questions? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Memorandum of Understanding with Douglas Market Development, LLC, for the development of an educational campus.
Good morning, Good morning, Mayor, members of the council, Scott Rigby, City Manager's Office and Economic Development Office. Today, we're here to discuss a memorandum of understanding, or an MOU, between Douglas Market Development and the City of Wichita regarding the creation and establishment of a educational medical campus. The 4 properties in discussion for this project are the former state office building that is there in blue. Just to the east is the old Henry's building. Up to the north in the red building is the Broadway Plaza building, and down to the south of the state office building is the former Sutton Place. All 4 buildings are vacant at this time. Just as a historical context, about a month ago, we came to you requesting special assessments for facade and asbestos remediation of these 4 buildings. I should say of a few of these buildings, and they are currently in the process of doing that right now. If you're out there in those areas right now, you can already see dumpsters out there where they're starting to clean up that area. The primary building is the former state office building, which is actually 2 buildings combined that compose about 200,000 square feet. It is proposed to be called the Kansas Health Science Center. It's to be focused on medical education campus, primarily with a DO med school that will locate in there. Approximately $25 million investment in this facility. They are agreeing to commit to construction by March 1st of 2020 and obtain a C of O, or certificate of occupancy, by July 1st of 2022. 2022, that's right. And the first class of students at the med school would commence no later than August 1st, 2022. As part of that med school, medical campus, the adjacent building, which is the former Sutton building, which is connected, as you see here, both by a skywalk and across the street, would be converted from apartments today to 119 units for student housing. It's about a $20 million investment. And again, they commence construction by March 1st, 2020, and a C of O by July 1, 2022. In addition, just directly to the east of the state office building is the former Henry's building. This is proposed to be changed into a culinary school, which would have a food hall, commercial kitchen, and culinary school. About a $10 million investment to improve both the interior and exterior. Again, started construction by March 1st of 2020, a C of O by July 1st of 2022. The last building, which is the current Broadway Plaza building, would be converted to a hotel, about a 119-room hotel building. As part of that, they would remove the 2 immediate buildings to the west in order to provide some additional entryway into that new hotel. It is slated to be a Marriott AC hotel, about a $20 million investment, and they would again start construction by March 1st of 2020, and then be open no later than December 31st, 2021. The developer has committed to invest at least $75 million between the 4 projects, 4 properties, and particularly with the state office building and medical campus, they would create a minimum of 324 new jobs at an average wage of $55,000 within 5 years of opening the project. They would also not contest any property valuation for the life of the TIF. As part of that, the city agrees to provide industrial revenue bonds for sales tax exemption on all 4 buildings. In addition, IRBs for 10-year property abatement only for the former state office building and the Sutton building, because those are considered the educational campus. And that would be subject to our typical 5 and 10-year IRB clawbacks for non-performance. In addition, they have requested a CID, or Community Improvement District, for the Henry's building because of the food court and sales within that, and as well as the new hotel. As part of that, that would be for the 2% and for 22 years, because it is a downtown property, a redevelopment of existing building, and as well as providing a gap filler for the project. In addition, the city will receive its standard 10% CID proceeds as part of that community improvement district. The industrial revenue bonds and the community investment district will not occur until the projects are complete. As part of additional commitment, the city is committed to provide up to 500 parking spaces and city-owned garages and parking lots. I'll show you a map just here shortly. In addition, since the skywalk that currently exists between the the Macy's garage and the former state office building and the Sutton building, the skywalk, that has direct connection. They will be able to have an access through that, as well as an option, if so at some future date, decide to purchase that garage. And lastly, we've been having some good discussion with them about the opportunity to do enhancements or improvements to Lewis Reflection Square Park. We would use city TIF funds, so again, for only public improvements to finance those park costs, and that the public would be involved in any discussions and design and consideration of those park improvements. So again, this is simply a conceptual rendering. Obviously, this is not anywhere close to what the final is because we want to include the public. The idea is to open up the park to provide it to be more welcoming and attractive to all participants, as well as providing a north entrance to the future Kansas Health Center complex. You'll see the building to the far left is the future hotel, as well as the new building that's attached to it, which is the porte cochere. The existing building you'll see just immediately west of the park would remain at this point. There is one building that would be demolished in order to expand the park to provide that enhanced entrance and view into the park. As far as the parking, you'll see the four buildings in blue are the four buildings of the Douglas Market Development Project. The four listed in red are current city garages or lots. You'll see the Macy's garage to the far left, the former Alice Hotel site, which is a surface lot, which is immediately south of William Street, and then you'll have the Block 1 and the State Office garage. We did engage WSU to do a benefit to cost analysis. As you'll see here, it exceeds the 1.3 requirement for the city. And then at this point, again, this is an MOU. We're asking for council consideration of approving that MOU, and in particular to allow them to continue to use that MOU as they discuss with the accreditation offices and school. This would allow us 120 days to negotiate a final details of development agreement that we'd bring back for your consideration. At this time, we would invite, it is our recommendation that the City Council adopt the resolution approving the memorandum of understanding and authorizing necessary signatures. A representative from the Douglas Market Development is here, and we have asked them to take a moment to talk a little bit about the project, and then stand for any questions.
Questions at this point? Seeing none. Oh, Vice Mayor, go ahead.
First off, I wanted to ask staff, whenever we had the applicant come before us on the Hilton project, and they had requested a 2% CID, and we had told them we couldn't go to 2%, could only go to 1.5%, and we also told them there wouldn't be any more CIDs downtown for a long time. So I'm just trying to find out what's changed.
When we negotiated the Hilton, I think you're regarding the Hilton Garden Inn, that was probably 2.5 years ago. At that time, we had a lot of discussion about what CIDs could and couldn't be used for, what the appropriate amount of coverage would be. As we had our 2 retreats last year for economic development, there was a lot of discussion about CIDs, where they could be used, what the amounts would be. And that time, the discussion was that for downtown projects, that would be eligible for up to the 2% for the 22 years, as well as if they demonstrate that it's a gap filler for the project, as well as is a redevelopment of existing building. So in the case of the Hilton Garden Inn, that was prior to those economic retreats that we had last year, and that retreat provided us some guidance about how to utilize CIDs at that point. As far as your comment about future CIDs, I don't remember specifically that conversation with us.
We can pull the minutes.
Okay.
It was in this meeting. Okay. Thanks.
So I think it has more to do with the gap than anything. So
I just remember it was very difficult for that applicant to get that processed. And, you know, I'm not against CIDs, but I want to make sure we're being fair to everybody that's coming to the
Sure.
bench.
And the reality is, I think they all should be difficult. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item?
Mayor Longwell, members of the council, again, Mr. Manager, again, my name is Jason Gregory with Downtown Wichita, 507 East Douglas. We understand that the action before you today is not binding, but it is a necessary step in this process. We'd like to note that Mrs. Tokala and partners have presented the initial development plans for the Kansas Health Science Center to the Downtown Wichita Board. And as she and her partners move forward with this project, we look forward to continuing to work with her team in the city on the finalization of the development. Her plans to renovate and redevelop multiple vacant properties, in the city center are going to be catalytic. This tremendous project. This substantial investment, as well as the potential for significant job creation, is a win-win for both downtown and our community. This is another key project that can further the implementation of Project Downtown, and we appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Seeing no other speakers, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. And Mr. Manager, I can see one issue we're going to have between Fidelity and this major project. I'm not sure there's enough cranes to go around in this city. It's a problem that we haven't had to deal with in a very long time, to see the kinds of investments that are coming into our city. I'm not fully sure that the community understands how significant this impact will be. When you look at all of the investments, the excitement surrounded around a university, a health campus, more people working and living downtown, and certainly bringing together opportunities with some other groups with the food court and what that potentially can be. I can't ever remember a time in the core of our city where we were seeing this level of activity and people that believe in not only Wichita but our future and where we're going. So I'm excited. I think this has the potential to change the dynamics of our city more than any other project we've seen in the core in a long, long time, including maybe even the baseball stadium. That's how dynamic this is. And so it's going to be a pretty neat opportunity, and I will turn it over to, is this Councilmember Johnson's district where all of the cool stuff's happening?
Always. Thank you, Mayor. I do too also agree that this is pretty awesome, and looking forward to seeing what comes back. So I would move that we take staff's recommended action. The City Council adopt the resolution approving the memorandum of understanding and authorize the necessary signatures.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item.
Ordinance amendment to section 4.04.045 of the Code of the City of Wichita pertaining to areas exempted for alcohol consumption.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Before you is a proposed ordinance amendment to section 4.04.045 of the City Code, and this will amend ordinance number 5935, which was adopted by you on second reading on March 19th and effective on April 1st of 2019. The first portion of the proposed amendment is an extension of those changes that were adopted in March. And as you recall from that amendment, the Kansas legislature amended state law to allow cereal malt beverage licensees to also sell beer that contains no more than 6% alcohol by volume. And as a result, the amendments that we presented back then were a result of those changes to state law. The definition of alcoholic liquor in state and local law includes 6% beer, and state law generally prohibits the consumption of alcoholic liquor on public property. However, that same law also allows for the exemption of public property by ordinance of the governing body of the particular locality where the property is located. And the ordinance presented to you in March included exemptions for the city's municipal golf courses and 2 city parks that were selling cereal malt beverage at that time to allow them to sell the 6% beer on their premises. And public property exemptions are set forth in the section of the city code that you're being asked to amend today. And the Ralph Wolves Riverside Tennis Center is currently licensed to sell cereal malt beverage and could sell 6% beer with the proposed change. And it was inadvertently omitted from the ordinance amendment that went to you back in March in that list of park property that was exempted. And please note that the exemption or the ordinance amendment before you today is similar to that in March. The exemption for the tennis center will be limited to 6% beer only. And this proposed change was presented to and approved by the Park Board at their April 8th, 2019 meeting. The proposed amendment also exempts the grounds and buildings located in McAdams Park for the consumption of all types of alcoholic liquor. Currently, only CMB is allowed in McAdams Park. The exemption you're being asked to approve was requested by the promoters of the Juneteenth Jazz Festival community event, which is occurring on June 21st and 22nd of this year. And the language of the proposed ordinance amendment provides that this exemption is limited only to consumption of alcoholic liquor in connection with that community event and only for the dates of that community event. After June 22nd, McAdams Park would no longer be exempted for consumption of alcoholic liquor unless future action was taken. And the expected outcomes of this ordinance amendment, sale and consumption of 6% beer will be expanded to include the Ralph Wolves Riverside Tennis Center, and the sale and consumption of alcoholic liquor will be allowed in McAdams Park during the Juneteenth Jazz Festival on the dates of that event, June 21st and 22nd. Are there any questions?
Any questions at this point? Do not appear to be any. We'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring the discussion back to the bench. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. So while I appreciate this for the one Juneteenth event, is there a way that we can exempt McAdams, just add that to one of the exempted spaces rather than having to try to change an ordinance every year? I read through this that you could possibly do it through a community event application, but that seemed to only apply to exempted parks. And then if McAdams is not that, or any other park, because I've had a few groups reach out about Hyde Park and some other spaces. So how do we make that process easier?
You're correct that it can only be done if the park is exempted. Our downtown parks are exempted, but only during community events, but no other parks in the city. That would have to be done by the council through ordinance. There's all sorts of options that could be explored. Different parks, different rules. You could have one blanket rule for all parks. You could go park by park. But yes, in answer to your question, there could be one ordinance done that would take care of it without having to come back for each separate event.
Okay. So again, I like this, but I personally think it would be easier if we had one deal that was equal for all the parks, and if you had a community event application that has oversight from the city anyway, and looking at our growing microbrewery businesses here and the fact that they like to do things in parks or would like to, I think that would be kind of the route to go. Just my thoughts.
Councilmember Fry.
Along those lines of questioning, so will this June 10th event still have to do a community event application?
Yes, and they've done one.
Okay, so thank you.
I think that was how it was discovered that they wanted to serve alcoholic liquor and brought this forth to you today.
Yeah, the way that we have exempted some of the other space where they don't have to fill out an annual application is through the change in state law from a few years ago. Like, for instance, Old Town, or not Old Town, but some of the places in Old Town that have, I think, applied. Union Station, did they apply for a event license? Maybe not.
I think you're talking about the common consumption.
Yeah, the common consumption.
That is for consumption in public streets and sidewalks and in areas where
So
you may.
common consumption wouldn't work here because
It's different, yes.
it's totally different.
Right.
So it works for public spaces more than just sidewalks. There's
Right.
public gathering spaces it works
Right.
for, but not parks.
It can also be for private places. It just allows consumption from maybe different establishments to occur in one common area. But this would exempt park property as public property to allow the consumption of alcoholic liquor.
Okay.
Two different.
Mayor, I would suggest that if this is something you want to discuss further, maybe you want to refer to the park board for their review and recommendation back to you.
Yeah, not only the park board, but I think we also would want our police department to weigh in on it, just in case there's any issues that they might have, and before we do a citywide exemption. I wanna hear from those folks if they have any issues. So if there's no other discussion, I would move that the city council place the ordinance on first reading and authorize all necessary signatures.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Quarterly financial report for the quarter ended March 31st, 2019.
Good morning, Mayor and members of the City Council. Sean Henning, Director of Finance. The item before you this morning is the quarterly financial report as of March 31st, 2019. This report serves to provide unaudited activity through quarter one, should be 2019, and compares the results back to the 2019 adopted budget, and then also gives us a first look at, or a preliminary look at where we expect to be with revised estimates for the current year. Some of the key points that I'll be covering this morning include the fact that most funds are consistent with the adopted budget. We do expect general fund revenues to perform better than we originally anticipated, and projections reflect that estimates are revised upward. Some of this, I think, should be familiar to you based on the retreat and the information that was shared with you last week. Also, the condition of the golf fund, we feel it's important to let you know that the condition of that fund still continues to deteriorate. With respect to the general fund, some of the highlights, court fines are performing below our expectations. We do expect those to be adjusted downward for our projections to year end in the tune of about $1.3 million. Sales tax is performing better than what we had originally anticipated. Originally, we were planning on growth of about 1%, and it's been increased to 3%, which provides us with a revision upward of about $1.2 million. Interest earnings also are another area that are strong compared to the adopted budget, and those will also be revised upward. We had originally anticipated, or the adopted budget reflected amounts of $4.5 million, and we'll be adjusting those to $10 million based on preliminary review. Departmental spending on the expenditure side is consistent with the adopted budget, which was $55.6 million in expenditures. Overall, in summary, revenues are higher than what we anticipated, and mostly due to interest earnings and sales tax growth. General fund expenditures, we do expect to be higher, and with one-time expenditures that are planned in certain priority areas. And overall, at the end of the year, we do expect the general fund to be balanced. The golf fund rounds declined for first quarter close to 40%, and revenue was down 24% from this time last year, and expenditures were consistent with what we planned for the adopted budget. Overall, the golf fund at the end of first quarter had an unencumbered cash balance of close to $250,000, which kind of shows that they are in a deficit position. With respect to our debt, general obligation debt at the end of first quarter totaled just over $1 billion. And of that portion, GO at large, which is the portion that's repaid through ad valorem property tax, represented only 5% of the total outstanding bonded indebtedness. The larger portions in the blue represent revenue bonds that are repaid through water and sewer utility rates and ratepayers. That represents about 44% of our total outstanding debt. Another large portion on the GO side represents special assessments. That represents 16% of the outstanding debt, and those bonds are repaid from property owners that benefit from those improvements, neighborhood improvements. As I mentioned before, GO at large represents only 5% of the city's total outstanding bonded indebtedness. During the first quarter, we did issue revenue bonds for the water and sewer utilities in the tune totaling approximately $44.5 million. Most of those bonds were issued to reimburse expenditures on projects that had already been completed. Later in 2019, we do expect to issue additional debt. We are planning with our regular fall sale that we will issue GO and special assessment bonds. And then also we're taking a look at the potential for a local sales tax issuance later this summer. In summary, overall, our financial performance is consistent or slightly better than the 2019 adopted budget. The golf fund continues to be challenged, and I think there are plans that are underway to take a look at that fund. General fund revenues are trending better than what we anticipated, and expenditures will include, or adjustments may be included for one-time areas. And overall, we do expect the general fund to be balanced in 2019. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions. At this time, staff recommends that you receive and file the quarterly financial report for first quarter 2019.
So last year, we ended the year with $2.5 million more than anticipated that we were able to push over into savings.
Correct.
Is it too early to anticipate what we believe the revenue might be over the, what previously was expected?
At this time, yes. We anticipated on the revenue side that the 2019 adopted reflected $244 million in revenues, and at this point, based on the information that we presented in the retreat and based what's reflected in the quarterly financial report, we're expecting revenues to be at around $250 million.
So you're on a track of 2 quarters of good news.
Yes.
Continue that.
Yeah. That's our goal.
If there's no questions, we'll go out to the public. Anyone in the audience like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench, and I move that we receive and file this financial report.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0, and it looks like we've taken years and added it to the manager's life. This is a little easier position, Mr. Manager, than we've been in a while. Madam Clerk, next item.
CON 2019-2, conditional use to permit an 80-foot tall wireless communication facility on property located at the northwest corner of West 18th Street and North Woodland Avenue.
Dale Miller, planning staff. The applicant is proposing the installation of an 80-foot tall with a 5-foot tall lightning arrestor wireless communication facility that would occupy 1,575 square feet of a fenced compound that would be located in the northwest corner of the property on which it would be located. The lot is 8,750 square feet. You can see there by the electric blue outline where the proposed location is. The application area is located in an enclave of limited commercial zoning surrounded by two-family residential zoning, the limited commercial being the red, the yellow is the two-family, and then beyond that, the gray or white is the single-family zoning district. The site is developed with a vacant commercial building that we're told was at one time a vehicle repair shop. According to the county records, the building was built in 1950. Testimony at Planning Commission stated the building has been vacant for a number of years. Land to the west is a specialty vehicle upholstery shop that was built in 1965. To the north is a commercial-looking building with a residence located at the rear of the lot, and that would be the property immediately north. According to testimony at Planning Commission, both these structures are rental residential properties. East across Woodland, on the northeast corner of Woodland and 18th Street, is a vehicle repair shop built in 1954 with residents located to the north. They are on TF3 duplex zoning, and according to the CAMA file, construction began on those in the 1930s. Southeast of the application area are more residences that are located in limited commercial zoning, and those were built in the 1920s. Directly south across 18th Street is an office that provides nursing services. That is also zoned LC and was built in 1944. Beyond the LC zoned lots are residents that are zoned TF3, and it is hard to see here, but the shadows, Westar has 56-foot tall wooden utility poles on the south side of 18th Street, running east and west for quite a distance. Today is council's second hearing of this request, and the basic facts are, and I'm going to suspend my usual rule of less is better from staff because of the interest in this particular case, and maybe spend a little more time than I ordinarily would. The application was filed on January 25th, 2019. The application is signed by the property owner, and according to the zoning code, a conditional use application may be proposed by the owner of the subject property. If the application is signed by the property owner, that's the only signature that staff needs to initiate an application. On March 4th, 2019, DAB 6 reviewed the application by a vote of and by a vote of 10-0 recommended denial. Based on the DAB minutes, 8 residents spoke and concerns were expressed about proximity of the tower to their property, health concerns, whether the tower was actually needed, potential devaluation of property surrounding the proposed site, frustration that denial of an earlier tower application did not prevent the current application from occurring. Smaller towers are a better option, and that the carrier should use existing towers. The DAB motion for denial was predicated on the application being out of character with the neighborhood, opposition of residents, and impact on the local community not being addressed. The Metropolitan Area Planning Commission reviewed the application for the first time on March 7th. 7 citizens spoke in opposition and concerns. They expressed their concerns, and I won't go through all of those because I presume you have reviewed the half-inch worth of material that's been submitted as part of the packet. But as part of the Planning Commission hearing, there were 11 pages of information supporting the neighbor's position that were available for the Planning Commission to review. Planning Commission recommended approval 10-1. The applicant had provided 13 pages of information supporting their request that was also reviewed by the Planning Commission at the time of the first hearing. Between the first MAPC hearing and the council's first consideration of the request, which occurred on April 9th, a large amount of material was submitted in support of each side's position. The will of the council was to return the request to the Planning Commission. The basis for the referral back to the Planning Commission was the large amount of material that was submitted by interested parties after the first MAPC hearing. And as you know, public hearings occur at the MAPC, and the council uses the information presented at Planning Commission as the basis for its decision. The MAPC heard the request for the second time on April 18th. 11 citizens spoke in opposition, and again, their comments are in the packet. The applicant also spoke, obviously, and provided information that supported his position. At the end of the hearing, the MAPC voted 10-2 to 1 to recommend approval. There is an 81.17% protest. This is showing in the far southwest corner of the slide, the furthest away protest petition. And then this slide shows up close of the properties that are in the immediate area. Because the 81.17% protest has been submitted, that triggers a 6 out of 7 voting requirement to approve the request. With alternate findings from those that were provided by the Planning Commission, the council can, by a simple majority vote of 4 out of 7, vote to deny the request. The comprehensive plan depicts this site as appropriate for residential uses. Here is the site plan, and I won't go into all the details, but like I did the last time in terms of how far back the site is setting from the property lines and other places. Suffice it to say that there will be a fenced compound that the tower will set in, and the tower location complies with the 1-to-1 setback from single-family or duplex zoning. There was an assertion that once approved, the tower could be increased to 100 feet in height by automatically, but it cannot be because the maximum distance in order to comply with that 1-to-1 setback from duplex zoning in this case would be 84.8 feet. And so at 80 feet, the tower theoretically could be increased to 4.8 feet if it were approved in the future. Here is the application area. It is in front of the carport and the shed there. To the right is the northern property boundary that shows the existing fence, and on the left is the existing building, the back of the existing building on the property. This is looking north from the site. This would be the commercial-looking building that I referenced, and behind it is the residence. At Planning Commission, it was indicated that these are both used for residential activities. Another shot looking at the house that's to the rear, looking north along Woodland. This is the vehicle repair shop that is located immediately east on the northeast corner of the intersection. And those are the homes on the southeast corner. That particular home, I believe, is one of the three that are eligible for historic designation. And then to the south is an office complex that houses the facility that if you need nursing services, you can contact them. And there is, on the right there, just in front of the car, is one of the 56-foot tall wooden poles that Westar has in the right-of-way. And with that, I try and answer questions.
Any questions at this point? Councilmember Johnson?
Dale, did the applicant at any point do anything aesthetically to this pole, or is it just an 80-foot tall steel pole?
It is proposed to be a galvanized steel pole.
Okay. And that's 30 feet taller almost than the wooden poles they have there now from Westar?
56 versus 80, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions at this point? Again, this is quasi-judicial hearing, or not hearing, but proceeding, and we will, the public hearings were held at the MAPC meeting and the District Advisory Board meeting. And so we will hold the discussion at the bench. And I'll turn it over to Councilmember Claycomb.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Dale. This has been a long process for you, the applicant, and the neighbors. The aesthetics or the visual appearance of this tower are at the heart of this issue. And while aesthetic considerations may not be as precise as more technical measures, they may still be considered as a basis for zoning rulings if they are shown to be carefully reviewed and not just a vague justification for arbitrary or capricious decisions. So in reviewing these aesthetic considerations, I evaluated the potential benefit or harm involved to the community at large in reaching my decision, which was based on several factors. So first, the character of the neighborhood. Second, the zoning uses of the property nearby. And third, the suitability of the subject property. So this area is predominantly residential. If you drive over there and look around, it is predominantly residential. And while it has some limited commercial zoning, it's comprised of one-story shops, not large industrial facilities, and these shops are squeezed in very close to the residential homes. The idea that poles already exist in this area is not a reasonable comparison. The existing poles, as Councilmember Johnson pointed out, are 56 feet tall and made of wood, not 80-foot galvanized metal poles. And the trees in the area, and you can see these in the pictures we saw today, they generally top out around 35 feet and are deciduous, and so they provide no cover in the winter or early spring. The fourth point, the extent of the potential detrimental effect on nearby property, including the negative effect on nearby property values. Both sides presented evidence on the effects of cell towers on property values. And I considered both sides' arguments, and I find the opponents' arguments more credible because they were more localized and from experts in the area, including real estate agents, brokers, and appraisers. And then finally, number 5, the gain to public health, safety, and welfare compared to the hardship imposed on the individual landowners. The concern for individual safety is legitimate. The residential homes are easily within the fall zone for ice and debris. It is frustrating to me that less intrusive technology has not been developed to use in these historic urban neighborhood settings. And finally, while we cannot base our decision solely on neighborhood opposition, we must take into account that there was an 81% protest when only 20% protest is required. And I don't recall a protest this large on other zoning cases. And of the hundreds of emails and phone calls I have received, I've only received 4 or 5 that supported the proposal. So therefore, based on the preponderance of evidence and this analysis, There is a reasonable basis for denial of this application. Therefore, I move to override the recommendation of the MAPC and deny the conditional use request for this wireless communication facility based on these alternative findings.
Second, Councilmember Clendenin.
Well, Mayor, I feel after that I need to at least explain my vote today, because I do value the neighborhood. I do value the voices in the neighborhood. I did notice in the protest map that it was the immediate area that protest and the neighborhood at large, as in previous cases, did not, maybe the protest petition wasn't circulated throughout the whole area like it was before. I don't know. But that being said, our city is on the verge of some big technological breakthroughs when we consider autonomous vehicles. We consider the information gap for areas of town that don't have as much access. When we consider capacity that our city is going to need, I feel like this is critical infrastructure. We think of streets as infrastructure. We think of highways as infrastructure. And I do believe that this is going to provide a strategic area in our city that has a gap. So that being said, I support the tower. This is not new for anybody. I've supported towers before, being that the zoning is not residential, and the zoning meets all the requirements with the exception of the conditional use. I will be supporting the tower today. I understand I'm probably very much in the alone on this, but I feel like knowing where our city needs to go technologically, this is an important decision. Thanks.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second for denial. Cast your vote. And the motion passes 5-2. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Approval of travel for Mayor Jeff Longwell, Councilmember Brian Fry, and Councilmember James Clendenin to attend the Community Leaders of America in Colorado Springs, Colorado, May 15th through 17th, 2019.
I'd like to make the motion to approve the travel.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, catch it. I just wanted to point out that this travel is paid for by the CLA. All expense paid by them.
Thank you for jumping in there. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item.
Approval of travel for Councilmember Brian Fry to attend the Kaufman's Mayor's Conference on Entrepreneurship in Kansas City, Missouri, May 20th through 22nd, 2019.
Councilmember Fry, do you want to?
Just want to state that this is also paid for.
Are they paying for a round trip?
They denied your request.
I move that we approve the travel.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Councilmember appointments and comments.
Appointments. Any comments? Councilmember Fry?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Due to weather conditions, we had to postpone last weekend's Proc Wetlands ribbon cutting. It has now been rescheduled for this Saturday at 9:30, weather permitting.
And the
For
forecast
wetlands.
looks a little shaky.
Yeah, I know, but it's a wetlands. We're gonna have to do it eventually, I think.
So maybe it would be fitting to do it in the middle of a rainstorm.
We did that for the ribbon cutting.
Yeah, I know. It's wetlands, as you said. Any other comments?
Why don't we just vote on the weather today?
I wish we had that much pull, Councilmember Johnson. That would be outstanding. So before we adjourn today, we do have 3 executive sessions that we need to move into, and I will read all 3 off here. Jennifer, how much time do you need for each one?
Mayor, probably for the first one, I think staff needs about 10 minutes. For the second one, probably 15 minutes. For the third one, 15 minutes.
So why don't we just say 45 minutes? That will bring us back here at 11:10. That'll give us plenty of time. So I move that the city council recess into executive session for the first one of 15 minutes to receive information on property acquisition for 3 projects pursuant to KSA 754319 for the preliminary discussion of acquisition of real property. The executive session is required to protect the city's rights to the confidentiality of its negotiating position and public interest. And the second one also for 15 minutes. That we move into the session for receiving information on a claim pursuant to KSA 754319B, paragraph 2, for legal consultation with attorney, which would be deemed privilege in the attorney-client relationship, and for potential litigation and legal advice. And again, this session is required to protect attorney-client privilege and public interest. And we'll just make the last one to 15 minutes also for the city to move into executive session for information and legal advice on a contract issued pursuant to KSA 75-4319B2 for legal consultation with the city attorney for potential litigation and legal advice. And it is required to protect attorney-client privilege and public interest, and we return back to these chambers no earlier than 11:10.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote.
I wanted to ask you to reread that.
You are killing me. Motion passes 6-0.